Really quiet.
Okay, I think we're live.
And we're live. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Alexis. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but it's not great sound. I'm wondering if I might just...
Oh, we've lost you. Hopefully she comes back.
So I can hear you. It's just not great, but I'll pay very close attention.
Very close attention. Okay, good. Where are you at the moment, Alexis?
I'm down at Currumbin.
Oh, nice.
Such a beautiful day. I've been in the ocean and it's absolutely beautiful day. Yeah. And where are you, Rachel? Is this your bedroom?
Oh, this is one of my kids' old bedrooms with stuff still in it. It's kind of the spare bedroom now. And people might notice that you've got my name at the bottom of your screen and I've got your name at the bottom.
It's an identity crisis. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll just leave it at that.
I'm impressed that we managed to be so technologically agile today, Rachel.
I know. Just in time management, they call it.
And what an awesome topic for today. This came up quite a lot in our workshop this morning.
Yes.
We spoke about shoulds and the number of times that we should ourselves, and then we did talk about changing our shoulding to a kinder approach to ourselves. Shoulds are driven by judgment and criticism, and choice, from my understanding, is driven by it's like an invitation, or an invitation to myself, which is much more appealing. Yes. And much more empowering.
Yes. So let's talk a bit about this should thinking, because I'm just going to maneuver around to get the sun is...
You're catching the sunlight, aren't you? Amazing.
No, it's so pretty and so distracting.
Angelic.
I'm not quite sure how to avoid this. Here we go. That's better. So at the workshop, we got people to write down 5 have-to statements or should statements. You know, I have to clean my kitchen. I have to go and see my mother. I should do more exercise, you know, and this is how our minds tend to work. You know, we do beat up on ourselves pretty harshly, and shoulds are one of the ways we judge or criticize ourselves. There's an implied judgment in a should, right? Because the should says there's a right thing and a wrong thing, and I should be doing the right thing. So
saying it's based on like dualistic thinking, that things are either right or wrong, as opposed to having a whole grey scale of nuance.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a moralism, a judgment, and a criticism implied in most of our should thinking. And we can feel it in the body. Everybody said at the workshop that I spoke to that there was a constricted, closed down, tight, tense, or maybe push back kind of feeling when they wrote down their shoulds or their have tos. And when they transform them to I choose to clean the kitchen, I choose to get my stuff organized, I choose to go see my mother, everybody reported a slightly different feeling about those statements, didn't they?
Yes.
And so
where does this come from, Rachel? Because this is quite, I mean, the shoulds are so enculturated. And, you know, I hear it even with my children. And there's even an expectation I've noticed with my clients that, you know, they almost come asking me to should them. And it never feels good. You know, we know it instinctively, and yet it seems so deeply ingrained that, you know, where does this come from? What's your understanding of how it got so stuck?
My understanding, and I've learned this from Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NBC, Nonviolent Communication, that a number of millennia ago, thousands of years ago, our culture sort of morphed from a more traditional or indigenous style of thinking about the world to start to incorporate a lot of what he called coercive language. You and I have spoken about coercive language before. Yeah. And our culture is permeated with coercive language. And coercion is a way of getting people in the culture and the society to do things out of fear and shame. You know, and so it's actually endemic through, and has been for thousands of years, through our systems of living, through our schools, through our justice system, through our culture, that, you know, if you do X, you'll be rewarded, and if you don't, you'll be punished in some way or shamed. So fear and shame as motivators, I think, is what drives the criticism, blame, and the should thinking that we all apply to ourselves and each other. And of course, it produces more fear and more shame. And it actually restricts our ability to think clearly, make choices that are effective. And it actually shuts down the learning centers of our brain. So it can actually limit deep learning because of the way shame and fear work in the brain if they're too strong. So I actually believe, and this is in response to Sarah's question on our post earlier today, I believe that most should thinking is not particularly helpful or unnecessary to motivate ourselves or others. And I think that there is an alternative to this.
So interesting. It reminds me of the phrase you used a couple of weeks back around shame limiting our learning. And that has been my experience. I've been more aware that when I do have an experience of shame, I shut down. I'm no longer creative. I'm no longer able to think constructively about a situation. The minute there's shame, I freeze. So yeah, the should is obviously a more subtle response than that. But I can definitely relate. There's a negative response to being told should. So how would you encourage listeners to identify, when they do that and whether it's having an impact for them negatively?
Yeah, I mean, I actually would like to say that I think most of us spend most of our days
I think you're right.
In a kind of should mindset, in a mindset of blame, and in a mind, because this brain between our ears is a sense-making, storytelling, problem-solving machine. And the way we've learned to make sense and tell stories and solve problems is very much in the right, wrong, good, bad thinking paradigm. And so I think that we jump to who's to blame, who's at fault, what should I or shouldn't I be doing, what should I have done, what shouldn't I have done. And it's understandable because we want to make sense of a situation and we want to solve our problems. But if we really pay attention to our lives and the circles and the loops that we keep going around and around and around in our behavior patterns and our thinking patterns, we'll see that one of the things that keeps us stuck is the blaming and the shoulding on ourselves and each other. And so I would encourage people to pay attention to their mind and to their bodies, because often when we're feeling stressed or we're feeling self-conscious or we're feeling embarrassed or some other difficult emotion, the emotion and the body is a clue to what we're thinking consciously or unconsciously. And I sometimes say to people, now give that feeling, these sensations, this emotion, give it a voice. What if it could talk, what would it say? And it's surprising how often my clients will say, if this emotion had a voice, it would say, you're a loser, you're an idiot, you should be blah, 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 you shouldn't have blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of blaming, labeling, and shoulding that's going on under the conscious awareness that's causing these tensions and emotions. And so that's why I say, I think we're actually, a lot of us, locked in this on a very regular basis.
So helpful. Yes. Okay. So if I'm noticing some constriction through my chest area, if I'm feeling pressured and stressed, that might be an opportunity to reflect, am I shoulding on myself? Am I blaming myself? Am I criticizing myself in some way? And as you're talking, it occurs to me that you're right. I think this is so deeply ingrained that many might actually have the belief, will I be able to achieve what I am setting out to achieve without shoulding, punishing, blaming, criticizing myself? So I think there's an element of trust involved in discovering another way, a potential way of coming from, I'm imagining, a more self-compassionate way, a gentler approach, a more invitational way. Yeah, what do you recommend?
Yeah, because this is so endemic and so pervasive, there's so many things we can bring to this. And self-compassion is one of them in self-compassion practices, where we see we're suffering and we see we're being hard on ourselves, and we've internalized a lot of voices from our past, from parents, teachers, and those voices have now become our inner voice. And when we see what we're doing to ourselves, we can simply stop and put our hand on our chest or our solar plexus and say, I'm doing my best. I'm only human. I'm suffering like other people suffer. And forgive ourselves and speak to ourselves kindly like we would to a good friend who we care deeply about. This is such a good practice, just having that inner companion who can speak to you in a kindly voice as an antidote to all of your self-judgment. So that's a really good practice that takes a lot of practice, I have to say. A lot of practice.
And do you ever suggest people write down the thoughts of that inner companion just to make them more concrete, more accessible? I know that affirmation, and I know it's more than affirmation, but the positive statements really only work when there's a momentum behind them. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
And like you say, that we actually, there's enough momentum that it becomes my internal talking. Do you have suggestions that people can apply in making that inner companion's voice, that inner compassionate voice?
Yeah, I mean, I think our the strong parts of our psyche, which believe that judgment and self-blame and self-recrimination are actually necessary, because all of us have been persuaded in this culture that being hard on ourselves and shoulding and blaming is actually the way to install change in ourselves. And so it takes quite a bit of self-persuasion to be and repetition to be convinced that actually we're not going to become lazy or stupid if we stop being horrible to ourselves. In fact, yeah, we need to convince ourselves that we're allowed to, we have permission to stop being horrible to ourselves. And even I'm still learning this, of course, when things get hard. I think we all struggle. And that there is another way. There is another way. So I actually recommend people get into Professor Kristen Neff. Kristen with a K and Neff is her surname. She has TED Talks and a great website and other resources online for self-compassion. And the more you learn about the research on self-compassion, and the more you try meditations and exercises and journaling and surveys, and she's got all sorts of stuff, the more you may start to...
Kristen Neff?
Neff, yeah.
Yes, yeah, sorry, I missed that, yes.
The more that you learn about this practice of self-empathy or self-compassion, I think the more the unconscious part of your psyche that doesn't quite believe it could start to be persuaded that actually self-compassion is not only an alternative, it's the best alternative, because self-judgment never works, really.
I love that statement that you gave us on retreat, Rachel. You said judgment is never helpful. And I know you don't use nevers all that often, but it got me thinking, yeah, judgment, self-judgment or self-criticism. Do you remember what you said? Self-judgment is never helpful.
It never helps. I mean, I'm not talking about coming to a conclusion through careful reflection and contemplation.
Of course, self-assessment's different.
I mean, I think it's okay to sort of say, I have realized this about myself, or I think I'm this kind of personality. But that's different I'm talking about the sort of judgment which shuts down curiosity. That's the problem with blame and judgment, is it closes down reflection and closes curiosity off. And curiosity is so necessary to kind of go into our experience and figure out what is going on, and therefore have a proper understanding, not this superficial judgmental understanding of the deeper needs. So let's talk about, after self-compassion, we need a process to understand what is underneath the should thinking, what is underneath the blame. And this is where I have not found a better model than nonviolent communication. There are other models which are similar, but I still always go back to NVC to understand, what am I actually feeling if I get underneath the judgment, and what am I needing here? And
on that, we will put some links in the comments below on our NVC practice group that you can join on a monthly basis.
Yes.
Rachel, have you found that you have shifted from should thinking to self-compassionate thinking?
I definitely live in a much more self-compassionate way now than I did 10 years ago, without a doubt. It does become a practice and a habit. And because I have a human mind, the automatic intrusive self-recrimination still comes in. You've probably heard me do it to myself, Alexis. And it's very human that we would judge and beat up on ourselves. But what I can do now is I can observe, I can witness that that's what my mind is going with, and then I can catch it and I can curtail it and I can bypass it. And I can only bypass it because I have some other skills, which is why we do our NVC practice groups, because we want people to practice the skills of diving underneath judgment and blame and finding their empowerment. Somebody wrote in the comments, who was that? Mia wrote empowerment. And Stephanie wrote, it was hard writing down the choose to statements. I found it very hard, which is interesting because what we have to do, what we are wise to do, is turn our have tos, our shoulds, and our self-blame into an experience of agency, which means choice, really, in psychology. So the exercise this morning of going from I have to or I should to I get to or I choose to, I mean, that reminds us that we actually do have some degree of choice. And in some ways, part of us doesn't want to own that, because there's a secondary gain in blaming ourselves and others, because then I don't have to do anything. Suddenly, if I feel like I actually have some choice here, and maybe I don't have a lot of choice, maybe I just have limited choice, right? But I never don't have any choice. Even prisoners of war had choice. Two choices, very harsh, but they still had two choices. So it's about owning choice, which is another developmental task of the psyche, is to kind of go, oh, I have a bit of responsibility and a bit of agency here over my life, even if it's just what I put in my mouth and whether or not I clean my kitchen. There can be profoundly difficult, humbling, but empowering moments of realizing I'm choosing this. I don't have to do this. So yeah, I guess I want to go to what Mia mentioned about empowerment and connecting with our needs or our values. This is a key way to empower ourselves.
I'm wondering, and I hear you absolutely on agency. I think it's the difference between feeling like life is being done to us or like we're doing life in any situation and in relation to any decision, big or small. Agency is key to wellness. I'm interested in how you've experienced a shift from should thinking to more compassionate thinking, how that has showed up in your life, how it's changed your life, I mean, because that's a significant thing, right? Even just to acknowledge the fact I'm having a should thought gives me more agency, gives me more choice, let alone being able to shift it to I'm choosing. I'm making a choice right now, even if it's something I don't want to do. I'm choosing to go to work. I'm choosing to go to. It's not my feeling, by the way, but that can be a drastic change in someone's life. How has it affected you, this shift?
Yeah, look, I could talk ad nauseum about that in so many ways.
I'm sure.
But I mean,
personally,
well, one story that comes to mind that I sometimes tell my clients, I call this story, there are two ways to unpack the dishwasher.
I love it.
And so, and I try to practice the principle of this story as much as I can, and I'm not 100% successful. So I want everyone to know that I'm just as human as you are. And sometimes I'm dragging myself into situations as much as the next person. But I was emptying the dishwasher one day, and my thinking was very much like, oh, I have to empty the dishwasher and no one else empties the dishwasher. And why am I always emptying the dishwasher? And then one of my kids walks in. And just before they walked in, I had the thought, no, I want to empty the dishwasher. I was practicing this shift, this reframe. I want to empty the dishwasher. Why do I want to empty? And I challenged myself to find the place in me that wanted to do it, that was having some needs met. And of course, it was for order and peace and relaxation and those kind of needs. Then my child walked in the room, and I'm so glad I did the reframe or the transform before he came in, because I was able to say to him, would you mind unpacking the top shelf, my darling? And my voice was relaxed. And he said, okay, sure. Had I still been in the have to and the should of like, these kids should be helping out more. I should be a better mother, and I should get more routines for my kids. And I'm such a bad mother, and they're such lazy kids. And because the should thinking goes out into labels, and it branches off into judgment. But because I transformed that just before he walked in, my voice and everything changed. I made a request, and he said, okay. And he unstacked the top shelf of the dishwasher. And that's why I call it, there are two ways to unpack a dishwasher.
It's a golden story, Rachel, and it sums up a little microcosm of what's happening in our macrocosmic lives. That shift, the shift, and then the change that has on your relationships, on the atmosphere within the home, and then the exponential flow-on effect of that I've had a good morning, I'm more likely to be buoyant at work, less likely to be drained when I come home. Yeah, that's a wonderful story.
And it's only on one, like there's lots of issues in our lives. That's the issue of sort of shared responsibility and stuff I feel like I have to do, when actually maybe I can find that place in me that wants to do it, the place that wants to go to work, the place that wants to visit my friend or my parent, the place in me that wants to clean the house, etc., etc. Like I always say to people, challenge yourself to find another place inside yourself. And it's that simple reflection we did this morning of I choose to, and why. What needs does it support? Does it contribute to my well-being in some way? Well, yes, it actually does. Suddenly I feel motivated, or I feel relaxed, or something that's much more conducive to my well-being.
Yeah.
But I still struggle when I'm in a really difficult, protracted situation that doesn't have an easy resolution. So a more ongoing sort of predicament, dilemma, or source of stress, as we all have in our lives. The dishwasher is a discrete task. It's done, it's not a predicament.
Sure.
But the more stressful and difficult life situations, I still get snagged, as we all do, into the should thinking. I should know better. I should be able to handle this. I shouldn't feel this way. I've had a lot of clients over the years say that sentence to me. I shouldn't feel this way. And suddenly they've got shame. They suddenly feel ashamed of being sad, or ashamed of being
having a feeling.
Angry, or vulnerable.
Which is the most pure, innocent experience. Yeah.
And so that's the stuff we've got to knock off. We've got to bypass the I shouldn't feel this way, or I should know better, because we go both ways with that. He should know better. They should know better. They shouldn't feel this way. None of that kind of thinking is curious or reflective. None of it helps us make a deeper sense or understanding. It just is such a barrier. But sometimes, like, no matter how hard we've worked, sometimes our minds will still judge and stereotype and label. So this is constant, ongoing mental work, I think.
Yeah, we're talking about a really big cultural change here. And it's occurring to me that it's not so much about the word should. I think that sometimes these things can be taken out of context, and, we become the should Nazi. But what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's about exploring what's underneath. It's about exploring, well, why? What is the need really underlying that? Because if I'm in contact with the need, and it may be a very valid need, I might be telling myself I should, be doing that. There may be a very valid need underneath that. But what I'm hearing from you is to inquire, what's underneath this. Yeah.
That's right. Try and see it in layers. The should thought or the judgment is the top layer. Okay, so if we can go, well, actually, do I want to do this? Maybe even just 1%, or whatever is underneath, look for that. And then if there's a feeling, look into that. And if there's a need under the feeling, what is that? And maybe there's a need under the need. The thing that makes me sad in this culture, or leaves me sad, is my preferred way of saying it, is the fact that people do stay at that top level of just shoulding and judging, and they aren't able to go. And I believe it's that they're not able to, they haven't got the skills or awareness to go diving, deep sea diving down through those layers of inquiry.
Yeah, that came up in the workshop today. I so enjoyed hearing people recognizing that that a needs-based approach is really quite endless, and that it brings us together in those universal principles like love. That was such a beautiful statement today, that love is really one of the deepest needs that we all share, and that if we can come from that perspective, that I might be needing to do this, I'm shooting myself because actually I need love. Well, that would be a really powerful place to work.
Yeah. And I'm remembering myself saying that Marshall Rosenberg had said all of those needs on the needs list are just different forms of love.
Yes, I love that. That's a beautiful statement and true.
I've got a question from Mia, if I may read that out.
Please do. Love to hear from you, Mia.
So she wondered about the dishwasher story. And so you reframe your thinking and you ask for help in that kind of more open-hearted way. And what happens if the person says no? How do we stay regulated and not lash out? That is such a good question, because that's kind of, the next step. So we've made a request from an awareness of, our unhelpful thinking and our underlying needs. We've made a good request, and then the other person says no. So let me think about this. So if my son had said nah, because that's how he says it, nah, then what I would do in that situation, I'm always curious about the yes behind the no, because Rosenberg taught us that there's a yes behind every no. If I'm saying no to this, it's because I'm saying yes to something else. And so I might be curious, why wouldn't you love to help me unpack the dishwasher right now, darling? Are you right in the middle of something else that you're really enjoying? I might not say it like that, but I might say, what's stopping you from helping me? That's a quick way of asking. What's stopping you from saying yes? Now, that is such a great question to people in our lives. What's stopping you from saying yes? Because he might be like, well, I'm angry with you because of that thing that you did earlier. Oh, well, that is good for me to know. Or he might say, I'm in the middle of playing this game with my friends online, and I've just come out here to get a drink of water because I'm so thirsty, but I'm right in the middle of it. I really don't want to miss it. And I'd be like, okay, how long? 20 minutes? Yeah, okay, come back in 20 minutes. I think we can negotiate if I find out what the yes is behind the no. That's what I would do.
Excellent. Yes, what's the yes behind the no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what else? I'm just looking through the comments here and seeing if you have any other questions. There's a couple of lovely
comments. Sorry I can't access the comments. I will have a look straight after this. I can certainly respond to any questions.
Lorraine Moyes, who is my mother.
She said, hello, Lorraine. Lovely to have you listening. How sweet.
Lorraine mum says, a friend of mine used to refer to this as should shit. Yes. It is should shit. It is the
like
shit
mother, like daughter,
of our brains. The thing is, brains can be dumb. Brains can be smart, but brains can be dumb. And if we remember this.
Yeah, mine can, definitely.
My brain can be really dumb. Everyone's brain can be really dumb. In a way, beating up on ourselves, recriminating, judging and labeling ourselves. In a way, when we think about it, this is really dumb. Like, our brains do it because survival mind, and we want to have explanations for everything now. And the ego doesn't like not knowing. So it'd rather insert a negative assumption or interpretation than have nothing at all. but it's kind of dumb, right? Because to be so horrible to myself and then feel shame and fear and anxiety and depression, it's dumb. That's a judgment, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes, I do.
So if I know that my brain can be dumb, then I can forgive myself, because that's how brains work. They can be so smart and so dumb. And then I can just become the observer of my own mind doing its tricks. The trickster mind definitely plays its tricks on all of us.
Yeah.
But I want to get some strategic psychological space. And this is where therapy and journaling and other things can help.
Yes.
Give me that strategic
Distance.
mental space.
Yeah.
Step back
Detachment.
and
Observation.
from my own mind. I mean, you teach
Yeah.
this to your clients as well. So Stephanie wants a list of needs. So when we sign off in a few minutes, I will post my favorite lists, needs lists and feelings list, Stephanie, for you in the comments.
Ah.
Okay. Did you have any other bits that you wanted to say on this topic of transforming shoulds and blaming thinking, Alexis?
Oh, that's such a great question. You really do ask golden questions.
So do you.
I only just say that, you know, like I think we need to really be patient with ourselves, knowing that it's like it's been there for generations, and that the intention is often good. I'm thinking about a dear friend who I know is highly motivated by shoulds, and you know, it's coming from a good place. You know, he wants to excel, he wants to achieve, he wants to get things done.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said
so
that.
It's not about not shooting,
no.
but it's about a shift to a more compassionate approach. And my personal experience is that it invites me to validate my values.
Good. That's such a good point. I'm so glad you just said that. Because we don't want to shoot on ourselves for shooting on ourselves. That would be ironic now. You know, I will use the word should in a context. So I see that I have 5 minutes left of a session with a client, and I say, we should wrap up in a few minutes. Now, that's not a judgment of anybody. It's just an acknowledgement of a boundary, which is, and a boundary exists because of a value or a need, which you just pointed out. So I think in that context, or, you know, we should be there in 10 minutes. You're texting your friend.
Of course.
It's not
I think the difference, though, between I think the reason why observing my shoulds and choosing a more compassionate approach has helped me to connect to my values is that a should, I think, is coming from an enculturated construct. I think it's often based on a value that's external. If I'm shoulding, it's usually because of some either cultural or familial value that I haven't deliberately chosen.
So it takes
it's just coming to me now. I haven't thought about it before.
No, I think it's a really good point. It takes away a sense of choice, and what we want as humans is a feeling or a sense of choice. And changing the should to want. And Sarah's just made a good comment. I should have known better. Is that valid? If you always do what you always do, you get what you always got. Well, I guess so, but I think it's more heart-opening and more motivating to say, I want to do this differently.
I'm choosing. I'm making a choice.
I'm making a choice to try something different, even if it's 1% different. It's still a bit different. I want to do, you know, something's got to give. Enough is enough. Sure, we've all hit the wall with our own behaviors and our own thinking many times. And then we think, I want it to be different, you know, but go to the needs. If we say I should have known better, we're not going to the needs, we're going to the enculturation. I want to do better. I want to do differently. Why? What needs do I have? How do I contribute to my own well-being if I do things a bit differently?
Yes, I think you're right, Rachel. I think the needs are essential in making the shift. I mean, I think it could be at quite a superficial level, even just changing my thinking around I'm now choosing is a different experience, but to connect it to the need is really what will allow a fundamental shift.
Yeah, it goes deeper. It's more empowered and empowering. I agree. So Sarah, I hope that addresses your excellent comment or question there just now. Now I'm aware that we've gone more than the half an hour that we try to stick to. And we've had some great comments and questions. I'll jump off in a minute and put those lists in the comments.
I'll also put the yoga and psychology community for people who are interested to come to the practice group.
Yeah.
And I'll also put information on our retreat coming up because there's interest. And so it's coming soon, the 8th to the 10th of March. So I'll put the details there. And in fact, our early bird is set to close at 9 p.m. tonight. So I need to stick to that. You get 10% off if you book online. It's with Rachel and myself. We're at Stradbroke Island, very confidential, safe space. We do a lot of NBC. We do yoga practices. We eat well. We breathe.
We watch the dolphins. We have fire. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It is a beautiful experience.
Okay,
Rachel, thank you for your time as always. And
my pleasure.
Listeners, thank you for your time. And it was really beautiful to see the community together today. That was deeply, deeply nourishing for me. Have you got anything you wanted to say on that, Rachel?
Well, that was this morning's practice group was the largest gathering we've had for a practice group. And it was, lovely energy. And we had fun. We had some learning. We got to, experience community for a couple of hours. It was just beautiful.
Very inclusive environment. And I noticed everyone was engaged and authentic.
Yes.
There wasn't a single person that didn't contribute and that didn't contribute authentically.
Yeah.
That to me is the deepest experience of success I could ask for.
I feel like spaces like our practice group are a remedy for this culture. They're like an active subversion against the dominant culture.
Exactly.
I like.
Yes. Thank you, my darling. Enjoy your evening.
I'll post my links, you post yours, and we'll see everybody next Sunday.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Okay, see you, Alexis.
Ciao, man. Bye.